Is that my phone?
All right, Yahweh Shem Yahshabrakatah, Hallelujah, Mabenaw Yahweh. Give all praise to the Father. My name is Officer Dawadah Malakim. And with me, I have the soldier Aliyah, who will be reading and introduce himself.
Yahbashim Yahushua Barakatah, Soldier Liar.
Khan. And then my brother, soldier Daniela.
Yahbashim Yahushua Barakatah, Soldier Daniela.
With the Malakim. And so this is the second video for the Apocrypha class that I started and that we've been doing here with the Malakim. The first one should be on YouTube already, and it was just the intro to Apocrypha, so we didn't go too much into any books yet. That was just the intro, where the Apocrypha came from, what, why it was taken out, and all the controversy around it. This video now is the first one where we're going into a book, and we're starting from the beginning, which will be the first book of Esdras. In the Apocrypha, it's only 9 chapters. So each installment is going to be just one book at a time. First book of Esdras, next one, second book of Esdras, and so on. This being just the first book of Esdras, I'm going to share my screen. All right, Khan. First book of Esdras, 9 chapters. We're just going to start off with a brief little preview of the book before we go into it. As you can see here, I got summaries of each chapter that we're going to read together. We're not going to read the whole chapter, but we're going to read the summaries of it. And first, we're going to start with just first book of Esdras, Greek. Also, Esdras A. These are the other names for the first book of Esdras. You have Esdras A, Greek Esdras, Greek Ezra. Ezra being, in the Bible, the KJV Bible. Esdras being the just Greek for Ezra, and what they use for the Apocrypha, first Esdras, second Esdras. So that's why they say Greek Ezra or 3 Esdras. The first book of Ezra is apocryphal, which is what they label it. They label it as apocryphal. When I say they, I'm talking about all these churches. You had the Catholics, the Protestants, everyone that had their book had their hands in the Apocrypha, touching on everything. Apocryphal just meaning of doubtful authenticity, although widely circulated as being true. That's the definition of apocryphal. So now that's what they, call, we believe, the first book of Ezra. Some people that are outside of the Hebrew understanding, that are in other religions, they say the West, it's not really regarded, but in the East, some out there in the East do regard the Apocrypha. So, it's just a bunch of confusion with all these different religions taking things out and whatnot. But it was a work that was included in the canon of the Septuagint. The Septuagint, I have a link right here. Just a quick little thing. Septuagint, the earliest extant Greek translation of the Old Testament from the original Hebrew. So, first Esdras was in there. Why it was taken out, we're going to get into that. But it was in there in the Septuagint, in the Greek translation of the Old Testament from the original Hebrew. Before, that all of the Apocrypha was there, and then boom, they took it out. So we're going to go into that real quick. The Roman Catholic Council of Trent in 1546, which, again, Roman Catholic, here they come, they put their hands in everything, which officially recognized several books of the Apocrypha, listed the first book of Esdras and the second as part of the biblical canon. So right now it's canon. However, these are the books we normally call Ezra and Nehemiah. So when they say the first book of Esdras and the second book, they're talking about Ezra and Nehemiah, which are in the Bible that is kept together not the Apocrypha, which they split off, you know, but the Ezra and Nehemiah in the Bible today, and are not to be confused with first and second Esdras. First and second Esdras, the reason why on the top right here, where I have my mouse cursor, it says three Esdras, is because first and second Esdras is actually Ezra and Nehemiah, but they called first Esdras in the Apocrypha third Esdras, and then same thing for second Esdras being fourth Esdras. That's how it appeared in the Vulgate. They were originally 1, 2, and 3, and 4. In the Vulgate, we're gonna get that right here real quick. I have the link. The Vulgate. Here, I'll let you read this. No, y'all, if you can read up in such a room. Right here.
Good. The Vulgate is the popular name given to the Latin version of the Bible.
Latin version of the Bible being another translation. Just like I have this Septuagint being the Greek translation from the original Hebrew. A translation usually attributed to Jerome.
Good.
We'll get into who Jerome is, but first we're going to keep reading real quick.
God, before Jerome's time, as the number of Latin-speaking Christians grew, the Bible was translated into Latin so that the Christians of the time could understand it. It is believed that the first Latin translation was completed around AD 200, although no manuscripts of this era exist today. The first Latin manuscripts were surely created in North Africa, for it seems that the church in North Africa was Latin-speaking from the start as compared to the predominantly Greek-speaking churches in Asia and Europe.
Now, this is important right here. Let's get this second paragraph, and then we'll go into who Jerome is.
2 centuries later, Pope Damasus the first commissioned a scholar by the name Jerome.
See, now, Pope Damascus, there we go with these popes and these Catholics and, these man-made things. Commissioned a scholar by the name Jerome to produce one standard Latin text of the Bible. So, let's see who Jerome is. Real quick. Soldier Eli, if you can read from the beginning where it says the man.
Gone. The man who came to be known as Saint Jerome was born as Eusebius, Sophronius, Hieronymus, around AD 345 in Stridon, Dalmatia, possibly in modern-day Bosnia and Herzegovina. Jerome is considered one of the early church fathers for his work in translating the Hebrew and Greek scriptures into Latin, the most widely used language at that time. This translation of the Bible is called the Latin Vulgate and was a critical part of the expansion of Christianity in the early centuries.
Okay, so now we got into what the Vulgate was and who Jerome was, who translated the Vulgate. Now, they called Jerome a saint. Before we finish there, I just want to get this verse right here. Elijah, if you could read Revelation 14 and 12 right here.
Come on, let me go pull it up.
Oh, it's on the screen.
Oh, come on.
So right
Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus.
So they call him Saint Jerome. Now, he was Catholic. And here's the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God. So we know who the saints are. The saints are the Israelites that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Yahweh Shai. Last I checked, the Catholics don't keep the law of God. They might have some 10 commandments or some things that they might regard, but they don't keep the laws that were given to the Israelites. Now, Jerome did translate the Vulgate, which is the Latin, and it does say that first and second Esdras appeared in the Vulgate, the Apocrypha, as third and fourth Esdras, so they were in there. Now, first Esdras contains the whole of Ezra, with the addition of one section which we'll read, just as Ezra begins with the last two verses of Second Chronicles. So the book of Ezra begins with the last two verses of Second Chronicles. First Ezra's begins with the last two chapters. This suggests that Chronicles and Esdras may have been read as one book at some time in the past. So that was, something that I found that was interesting when I was looking into this. And I did look at it, and yeah, Chronicles and First Esdras do the last two chapters of so like in Second Chronicles is the first two chapters of First Esdras. So they're real close, tied in. They could have been read as one thing at one time. But so with that being said, I have right here chapter 1 of First Esdras. I have a summary of each chapter. There's 9 chapters. This is basically the whole thing of the lesson here that we're going to get into. First chapter is equal, meaning that what we're about to bring out here, that's in the first chapter of the first book of Esdras and Apocrypha, you can find it in Second Chronicles 35, chapter 35 and 1 through chapter 36 and 21. So those are the first two chapters, which is what we were saying here, that not equal, what's the word? That are read just as the first chapter of the book of Esdras. So in the first chapter, it talks about King Josiah and his institution of the celebration of Passover. Now, it doesn't say that, they weren't keeping Passover, but it says that it's a Passover that had not been kept as such in the land of Israel since the time of the prophet Samuel. So, Daniela, if you could get First Esdras chapter 1, 20 through 21, we're going to read that. Obviously, you can get it right here. This is the first chapter.
Verse 20.
20, then read to 21.
Book of First Ezra, chapter 1, verse 20 through 21. And such a Passover was not kept in Israel.
Such a Passover was not kept in Israel.
Since the time of the prophet Samuel.
Since the time of the prophet Samuel. That's it?
Verse 21.
21.
Yeah, all the kings of Israel held not such a Passover as Josias.
I want to bring that part out because Passover's coming up. And, especially coming into this truth. And, at the time of this video being recorded, I know someone may watch it in the future and maybe past the Passover or not around. But as I'm recording this video, Passover's coming up soon. And, it says that King Josias was keeping the laws. And this is way after, the split of the two kingdoms, the northern and southern kingdom. And then you had the kings that were just going off. But then you have Josias, who kept a Passover that hadn't been kept like such since Samuel. All the kings before him hadn't kept a Passover of this significance, meaning the way they kept it. So that's the beginning of the first chapter. But then it also talks about his tragic death due to attacking the Pharaoh of Egypt when God said not to, through the Pharaoh and the prophet Jeremiah. Followed by the history of Jerusalem. So before I read this third part, we're going to talk about how he was told to, we can actually get it real quick. I don't think it's this verse, Esdras 49 and 58, but it is right here. If you could read. Okay. Start chapter 1, verse 25. This is going to be on how Josias actually ended up dying. And we're going to read that real quick. Start at 25.
Ezra chapter 1, verse 25. Now after all these acts of Josias, it came to pass that Pharaoh the king of Egypt came to raise war at Carchemish upon Euphrates, and Josias went out against him.
Okay, so after all these good things Josias was doing in the eyes of the Lord, the Pharaoh of Egypt was raging war on the Euphrates, and so Josias came over there. And what does the Pharaoh say?
But the king of Egypt sent to him, saying, What have I to do with thee, O king of Judea? I am not sent out from the Lord God against thee, for my war is upon Euphrates.
So this is another nation saying, first of all, he wasn't even going to war with Israel. He was going to war somewhere else on the Euphrates. But Josias came and stepped in, and he said that the Most High God told him to go to war with these people over here. And continue.
But the king of Egypt said to him, Yeah, the Lord is with me, hasting me forward. Depart from me, and be not against the Lord.
So this is the king of Egypt, another nation, telling Josias, the king of Israel at the time, Judea, telling him that your God told me to do this. Don't go against me, because you'll be going against what God told me to do, and he'll destroy you. That's coming from another nation. So let's see what Josias chooses to do.
Verse 27. Howbeit Josias did not turn back his chariot from him, but undertook to fight with him, not regarding the words of the prophet Jeremy spoken by the mouth of the Lord.
All right. So he went to war with him anyways, in which you can find in Second Chronicles also. That's why we have this up here that I just highlighted. You can find what we're reading is in the first book of Esdras, but also in Second Chronicles.
But joined battle with him in the plain of Magdu, and the princes came against King Josias. Then said the king unto his servants, Carry me away out of the battle, for I am very weak.
So in Second Chronicles, I went and checked and read where that was, and it says that he got shot by the archers, which right here, it's just saying that he went against him. It didn't say how he got hurt, but it did say that he ended up getting wounded. And if you want to go even deeper to that in Second Chronicles, it says he ends up getting shot by the archers. And so they carried him away, and he ended up dying from his wounds because he attacked the Egyptians. Well, the Most High told him not to. They told Josias through the Egyptian and the prophet Jeremiah with him. So now with that, we're going to go into the third part of chapter 1. At the end, the chapter ends with the history of Jerusalem up to its destruction and the Babylon exile of the Jews. So we're going to read that too, to us being exiled by the Babylonians and being took captive. So Elijah, if you're able to get Soldier Elias, Lucky, if you're able to get First Esdras 1 and 49, and you're going to read 49 to 58.
This is the book of First Esdras, chapter 1, verse 49. The governors also of the people and of the priests did many things against the laws, and passed all the pollutions of all nations, and defiled the temple of the Lord.
So here's Salakia. So here's Israel going off again. We're going to see what the Most High does about that. See. You can continue, line 50.
Okay, come on. Which was sanctified in Jerusalem. Nevertheless, the God of their fathers sent by his messenger to call them back, because he spared them and his tabernacle also.
So Salakia, one more time. So the governors of Israel were going off, but God of their fathers had mercy, sent messengers to call them back to spare them. 51 is going to tell us what they did with that mercy.
But they had his messengers in derision, and looked when the Lord spake unto them. They made a sport of his prophets.
Going off again.
So far forth that he being wroth with his people for their great great ungodliness, commanded the kings of the Chaldees to come up against them, who slew their young men with the sword, yeah, even with the compass of their holy temple, and spared neither young man nor maid, old man nor child. Among them, for he delivered all into their hands. And they took all the holy vessels of the Lord, both great and small, with the vessels of the ark of God, and the king's treasures, and carried them away into Babylon. As for the house of the Lord, they burnt it, and break down the walls of Jerusalem, and set fire upon her towers. And as for her glorious things, they never ceased till they had consumed and brought them all to naught. And the people that were not slain with the sword, he carried to Babylon, who became servants to him and his children till the Persians reigned.
Salakia. So he basically, up here, it says, Most High commanded the kings of the Chaldees to come up against him. The Most High does these things because we went off. And then this part's important. I'm going to let the soldier finish, but this part's important. Till the Persians reigned. So that's what the rest of this is about, the first book of Esdras, chapter 2 to 9. But if you could continue, Salakia, verse 57.
Son, who became servants to him and his children till the Persians reigned, to fulfill the word of the Lord spoken by the mouth of Jeremy. Until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths, the whole time of her desolation shall she rest, until the full term of 70 years.
It's a long time. So now we're going to move on. So that's chapter 1. Everything that happened in chapter 1. Now we're going to chapter 2. Chapter 2, 1 through 14 lines up with Esdras. I have it right here. These in parentheses are all just lining up with the first book of Esdras. You can see how they, go hand in hand. Isaiah 45 and 1 through 13. So this chapter starts off with introducing us to King Cyrus of the Persians, after he conquers the Babylonians and what he does. So I'm going to bring this up on the screen. Daniela, if you could read Isaiah, I typed it wrong, but it should come up 45. 15 is what I want to get. So up to right here.
Book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 1 through 13. Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus,
who is the king of the Persians,
whose
not an Israelite,
whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates.
Okay, so with that being read, the Lord, his anointed, he chose Cyrus to do this, which is the king of the Persians. We're going to drop down. I said 1 through 13, Slaki, I meant 1 and 13, and see what he has him doing. So, verse Khan also had a precept to add with that Isaiah 44 and 28. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid. Verse 13 is what the Most High is going to have Cyrus do.
Verse 13. I have raised him up in righteousness, and I will direct all his ways. He shall build my city, and he shall let go my captives, not for price nor reward, saith the Lord of hosts.
So he's going to use Cyrus to let go his people, because remember, the Babylonians at the time when they took over Israel and burnt everything down and took our people as captives, That was under King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonians. He took them down, but then Cyrus, over time, took over Babylon. So now he is over Babylon. He's not the one that had took the Israelites and did all that. So now he just inherited us basically by taking over Babylon. Now he has. So now the Most High is going to use him to let us go back to our land. And he's going to put it in his heart to just be so like, he's going to be giving gifts, and like we're going to get into all of that. But like everything that he does. So with that, so the Edict of Cyrus authorizing the Jews of Babylon to return to Jerusalem. That's chapter 2, verse 15 through 26. So if you, soldier Danya Allah, if you can go in the Apocrypha to first book of Esdras, chapter 2, and just start reading at verse 15.
First Esdras chapter 2, verse 15. These were brought back by Sanballat, together with them of the captivity from Babylon to Jerusalem. But in the time of Artaxerxes, verse 16.
Oh, and Salakia. Get this right here is just showing the parallels with Ezra. If you want to look into this, these read the exact same. That's where the first book of Ezra is. You know, a lot of it is in Ezra. If you can start at chapter 2, verse 1, that's going to go. This basically, Isaiah 45 is the precept to chapter 2, verse 1 and on of who Cyrus is.
In the first year of Cyrus, king of the Persians, that the word of the Lord might be accomplished, that he had promised by the mouth of Jeremy.
It's Jeremiah. It says Jeremy, but
okay. The Lord raised up the spirit of Cyrus, the king of the Persians.
This is the Lord doing all these things. You know, a lot we talk about how, you know, he brings down these other nations, and not just the other nations, us too. But he also uses the other nations, you know, to help Israel. And he uses them, he puts them in places of power, and this is what he's doing with King Cyrus.
And he made proclamation through all his kingdom, and also by writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of the Persians, the Lord of Israel, the Most High Lord, hath made me king of the whole world.
Look at Cyrus, the king of the Persians, saying, the Lord of Israel has made me king. Continue. So this is basically Isaiah 45 unfolding. So go ahead.
Verse 4, and commanded me to build him an house at Jerusalem in Jewry. If therefore there be any of you that are of his people, let the Lord, even his Lord, be with him.
Cyrus saying the Most High commanded him to go back and build up what had been destroyed. And he's saying of his people, so he's talking to the Israelites. Go ahead.
And let him go up to Jerusalem that is in Judea, and build the house of the Lord of Israel. For he is the Lord that dwelleth in Jerusalem.
Good.
Whosoever then dwell in this places about, let them help him. Those, I say, that are his neighbors, with gold and with silver, with gifts, with horses, and with cattle and other things, which have been set forth by vow for the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem. Then the chief of the families of Judea and of the tribe of Benjamin stood up.
Because they heard him say this to you.
Stood up the priests also and the Levites and all they whose mind the Lord have moved to go up and to build a house for the Lord at Jerusalem.
Good. So there, after the Cyrus putting that out there, he was ordained by the Most High to do this. In Isaiah 45, he allows them to do that, and then so the Jews stand up and they go back and they get ready to start building everything that was destroyed in Jerusalem. Now, still in chapter 2, the first attempt of the returning Jews to rebuild the temple is blocked by Samaritan opposition because they were worried of the Jews' rebelliousness to kings in the past. So they were talking about, these Jews, they're building this up, they're building that up, they become strong, and at a point they're going to rebel. In their past, have been rebellious to kings, and they were worried of the Jews' rebelliousness to kings in the past, and once they build up their city again, they would obey God over the kings in the area. So basically, came to a halt because the Samaritans seen that they were going to build it up again, and they're like, no, they're going to rebel against our king, and they're not going to be down with what we're trying to do, especially once they get strong enough. So, end of chapter 2, all this building of that Cyrus authorized of Jerusalem came to a stop. So there's a pause right there. So now we go to chapter 3, which talks about the story of Zerubbabel as the Jews' deliverer. Now, this right here, this is in the first book of Esdras. The 3 couriers of King Darius dispute the question of what is the strongest thing in the kingdom. So King Darius in chapter 3, we get that real quick. Verse 1 all the way up to chapter 5. Chapter 3 and chapter 4 are chapter 3 is not long at all, and chapter 4 is decent chunk, but it's all about this question that Darius asked these 3. So I'm going to read the summary of it. The story of Zerubbabel as the Jews' deliverer. Okay, that's what this all encompasses about. So 3 couriers of King Darius dispute the question of what is the strongest thing in the kingdom. So Darius asked 3 people, what is the strongest thing in the kingdom? The winner of the debate is to receive great honor and favors from Darius. So this is what chapter 3, verse 1, all the way to chapter 5 is about. One of them is Zerubbabel, a descendant of King David. So one of them is an Israelite, descendant of King David. The 3 young men publicly debate the matter before the king and his court. So keep in mind, one of them is descendant of King David. The first holds that wine is the strongest. So the first one says wine is the strongest. The second claims that the king is the strongest. And Zerubbabel declares that it is women who are strongest, but that truth is even stronger than women. And in that, what he says, he goes into context in here, talking about how men go to war and do all these things for women, and he gives all these examples. There's one right here. Let me get it. He gives an example of how, like, he's seen a queen touching on the king's crown and putting it on her head and stuff, but she doesn't get in trouble for that because the king loves her. And so that was basically Zerubbabel's example. But then also he says truth is even stronger. So with that being said, Darius concurs with Zerubbabel and at his request appoints him to lead a new wave of exiled Jews. So this is Darius now. So this is after Cyrus. So remember, Cyrus was the one that said we could go back and build, and he would help build Jerusalem. But then the Samaritans got in the way. Time goes by. Now it's King Darius, who's king of the Persians now. So King Darius allows the Jews, he appoints Zerubbabel to lead a new wave of exiled Jews from Babylon to Jerusalem to complete the restoration of the temple. So now Darius is allowing them to go back and finish basically what they did. And that's chapter 3, chapter 4, and the start of chapter 5.
Okay.
So now with the rest of chapter 5, a lot of it is just reading the list of names of the exiled Jews returning. I'll just give a quick example, but it just goes on and on, giving the names. And right here, and there are they of Jewry that came up from the captivity where they dwelt as strangers, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away unto Babylon. And they returned unto Jerusalem and to the other parts of Jewry, every man to his own city, who came with Zerubbabel, with Jesus, which isn't, his name is Jesus, but Hamashiach Yahushai is later down the line, but this is just a man who had the same name. Nehemiah and Zecharias and Rehias and Ananias, Mordecaius, Belzarias, Aphasarius, Aurelius, the number of them, the nation and their governors, sons of Poros, 2,172. The sons of Saphat, 472. The sons of Beri, 756. So this whole chapter is just reading names of the exiled Jews coming back. And let me see where I was. So that was chapter 5, 4 through 6. And now chapter 5 and 7 all the way to 73. It's read the same in Esdras 2 and 1 through 4 and 5. So that's 2 chapters in Esdras, but 73 verses. An extensive list of exiles returning with Zerubbabel. So just, them and their fathers and their houses returning to Israel. And the beginning of the temple's reconstruction and Zerubbabel's rejection of Samaritan assistance, followed by their opposition and another interruption of building. So now it says Samaritans are trying to assist them. So we're going to read why, and Soldier Elia, if you can get First Ezra chapter 5 and read 66 through 73.
Come on, let me pull it up.
Come on, and I'll pull it up too.
First Ezra chapter 5 starting at 66. Wherefore, when the enemies of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin heard it, they came to know what that noise of trumpets should mean.
Khan, so Salakia, real quick, before this, leading up to this, it was Israelites coming back in. They were blowing trumpets and being happy and loud. When we blow the shofars too, you can hear it. So the enemies of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin heard these trumpets, and they came to know what the noise of trumpets should mean. You can continue.
Wherefore, Salakia, and they perceived that they that were of the captivity did build the temple unto the Lord God of Israel. So they went to Zorobabel and Jesus and to the chief of the families and said unto them, we will build together with you.
See, now they're trying to get in with it, and they see that it's being built up. They're trying to be cool with us now. So after they had previously, when it was King Cyrus, they stopped it. So now they're trying to be cool. So you can continue, Salakia.
Come on. For we likewise, as ye do obey your Lord, and do sacrifice unto him from the days of Asbareth, the king of the Assyrians, who brought hither. And then Zorobabel and Jesus and the chief of the families of Israel said unto them, it is not for us and you two build together an house unto the Lord our God. We ourselves alone will build unto the Lord of Israel, according as Cyrus the king of the Persians hath commanded us.
Right.
But the heathen of the land, lying heavy upon the inhabitants of Judea and holding them straight, hindered their building. And by their secret plots and popular persuasions and commotions, they hindered the finishing of the building all the time that King Cyrus lived. So they were hindered from building for the space of 2 years until the reign of Darius.
Oh God. So with that, so they wanted to come build with him. He said, you can't do that, after you hindered what we had done. So, chapter 5. Okay, we got that. So now chapter 6 and verse 7 through 9 you can find in Esdras chapter 5, starting at verse 1. But pretty much correspondence between the governor of Syria and Darius, clarifying the latter's authorization to rebuild the temple, followed by the details of the completion of construction. So it's just talking about how the governors of Syria and stuff were like, who authorized this to be done. The Jews were building their temple, and Darius was clarifying, the authorization that he gave them to rebuild it, and gave them the details of the completion of construction, and talked about how Cyrus, originally gave him this, and so Darius was just clearing it up. Darius, the Persian king, was clearing it up for us, and so that was in chapter 6, which isn't too long either, and then we come to chapter 7, which is actually very short. Chapter 7 is only 15 verses. And basically, what chapter 7 talks about, how the holy house was finished in the 6th year of King Darius. Dedication of the temple. In dedication of the temple, it says that they offered 100 bullocks, 200 rams, 400 lambs, 12 goats for the sin of all Israel. And then they held the celebration of Passover. And we can get that right here. Soldier Daniel, if you could just read verse 10 to 15.
Verse 10 through 15. And the children of Israel that were of the captivity held the Passover the 14th day of the first month. After that, the priests and the Levites were sanctified. They that were of the captivity were not all sanctified together, but the Levites were all sanctified together. And so they offered the Passover for all them of the captivity, and for the brethren the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel that came out of the captivity did eat, even all they that had separated themselves from the abominations of the people of the land, and sought the Lord. And they kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days, making merry before the Lord, for that he had turned the counsel of the king of Assyria toward them, to strengthen their hands in the works of the Lord God of Israel.
Good. So the chapter 7, again, very short, but it covers a lot about, what we sacrifice for the sins of Israel. And then it goes into us celebrating Passover after the building of the holy house finished in the 6th year of King Darius. Now, there's 2 chapters left. Chapter 8 and chapter 9. Chapter 8 closes with the beginning of chapter 9. Obviously, but when I say that, I mean, we'll get to it, but it talks about, for beginning of chapter 8, the return of additional exiles under Ezra. So you get more people returning to Israel in chapter 8, and it gives, the names of them. And then it talks about the new Persian king Artaxerxes blessing the Jews with gifts to take to Jerusalem. So the Most High is putting these Persian kings back to back to back that are blessing the Jews to take Jerusalem. He's giving them gifts to take to Jerusalem after Esdras goes and visits, and he's placing punishments for transgressing God's laws. We're going to read that. So Josiah, if you could get first Esdras and just read chapter 8, verse 24 and 25.
Let me pull it out.
Right.
First Esdras. You said chapter 8, 24 and 25?
Right.
Okay, Con.
And this is Artaxerxes saying this, putting this in right here.
Ready?
Con.
This is the book of First Esdras, chapter 28, or it's like chapter 8, verse 24 through 25. And whosoever shall transgress the law of thy God and of the king shall be punished diligently, whether it be by death or other punishment, by penalty of money or by imprisonment. Then said Esdras the scribe, Blessed be the only Lord God of my fathers, who hath put these things into the heart of the king, to glorify his house that is in Jerusalem.
So he was putting in place, there's punishments for transgressing the laws of our God. And then Ezra was just giving thanks to the Lord for putting that in the king's heart. Now, after that, it goes into Ezra's preaching against taking strange wives of other nations and how they must put them away. So, Daniela, actually, Soldier Elia, since you're there, if you could get same chapter 8, of verse 92 through 96.
92 to 96.
It's just Ezra closing out chapter 8, talking about how we took strange wives and how they must be put away.
I got it. This is the book of First Ezra, chapter 8, verse 92 through 96.
Right.
Then Jeconias, the son of Jelis, one of the sons of Israel, called out and said, O Esdras, we have sinned against the Lord God. We have married strange women of the nations of the land, and now is all Israel aloft. Let us make an oath to the Lord that we will put away all our wives, which we have taken of the heathen with their children, like as thou hast decreed, and as many as do obey the law of the law of the Lord. Arise and put in execution, for to thee doeth this matter appertain, and we will be with thee. Do valiantly. So Esdras arose and took an oath of the chief of the priests and Levites of all Israel to do after these things. And so they swear.
So basically, it's just talking about how they made an oath that, to put away their strange wives of these other nations. And it says with their children, like thou hast decreed, and as many as do obey the law of the Lord. So that kicks off chapter 9, where with the strange wives, with Daniela, if you could read right here, chapter 9, verse 7 through 10.
7 through 10. Verse 7. So Esdras arose up and said unto them, Ye have transgressed the law in marrying strange wives, thereby to increase the sins of Israel. And now by confessing, give glory unto the Lord God of our fathers, and do his will, and separate yourselves from the heathen of the land and from the strange women. Verse 10. Then cried the whole multitude, and said with a loud voice, Like as thou hast spoken, so will we do.
So they did what, they had to do. They put away their strange wives. They cried with the multitude. So will we do. Basically goes with how Yahushua said, when he was praying to the Most High, nevertheless thy will be done. So we're about to close it out. Chapter 9, verse 37 through 55. You can find that in Nehemiah chapter 7, verse 73 through chapter 8, all the way up to 12. They would read the same. And basically, the end of chapter 9 now is Ezra reads the law, reaffirming God's covenant with the Jews as they made merry, closing it out basically a happy ending. As of now, the Jews are made merry, as Ezra's reading the law to them, reaffirming God's covenant. And with that being said, that's the end of the summaries I have. Right here, I just wanted to show you guys just something I think cool that I found. basically talking about comparing First Esdras and other things found in Second Chronicles. You could see right here these verses. You can find them in Second Chronicles. It gives a little table of contents. The beginning of Ezra, Cyrus's edict to rebuild the temple. You can find it at First Esdras, and then you can flash forward to Artaxerxes' reign in Esdras 4 and 7 through 24. And you have all these in the second year of Darius's reign, basically just tying it into Ezra's. First Esdras, tying it into Ezra's. Just showing how they go hand in hand. So stop sharing. With that being said, say Tawada to anyone that clicks on this video and tunes in, and we give all praise to the Most High.
Praises.
Me, Officer Dawada, my brother,
Soldier Daniela, Shalom.
Khan, and then the Soldier Aliyah. If you would like to bid him a shalom.
Shalom, family.
Khan, shalom.
Khan.
How about Shimya Shabrakatah? All praises to the Most High.
All praises.
All praises to the Most High.
Is that my phone?